Hey everyone, welcome to this another video I'm recording. This video is a bit interesting because it's New Year and I'm planning to migrate my website again after I don't know 10, 20 times already for the past 10, 15 years. But one thing that kind of like crossed into my mind was that in terms of personal blogs and stuff like that, um, I think based from just observation, people tend to really stick to a CMS that kind of like easy to use. And like I did try a lot of CMS as well in the past, such as WordPress, Ghost, .NET Noob, and all those other stuff as well. And then, for the I think I did migrate to something like um, somewhere in between. I can't remember now. And then I moved to like the Markdown thingy, yeah, with Jekyll, Hugo, and stuff like that. Then last year I was thinking about exploring Gatsby as well. But one thing I problem that I had is that although Markdown is really good, there's just so much stuff you have to handle on your own when you're using this kind of like Jamstack or like static web app approach. And at the end of the day, like when you're trying to publish something, you really just want to focus on your content. And one thing that's been consistent was that, WordPress. And so here I am attempting to kind of like create a WordPress on Azure. Um, but one thing I do remember is that a few years ago, templates like WordPress on Azure is hosted on something like an app service, right? And I think one of the challenges back then was that it also uses the like a really expensive MySQL instance, so it's kind of like a bit hard to maintain, um, and so you kind of like lose the value proposition of using like a managed WordPress on Azure. But I think like a decade ago, Azure on WordPress is hosted on something like a cloud service. I don't remember now, right? But one thing that kind of like caught my attention was that what if you can actually host WordPress on Azure Container Apps? And Azure Container Apps is something I've been using for the past 2 years, 2 years ish, as kind of like my default deployment model for any web application or even APIs that I'm working with professionally at work. And so I'm just want to take a stab if this is worth doing. If like WordPress and ACA, Azure Container Apps is actually worth exploring and probably migrating my website as well in the future from this to this. So let's get started. So first off, there's this repo from Azure Samples, which is the app template WordPress and ACA. Um, basically, yeah, like okay. So this template uses CI/CD on GitHub Actions. All right. So it uses GitHub Actions, so that's very important. So does that mean I probably have to clone this or sorry, fork this somehow? Um, yeah, okay. Purpose deliver. Okay. I mean, I might be assuming that there's also a way to just deploy this via something like Terraform or Bicep or something like that. Let's take a look. So WordPress, yep, introduction. Like yeah, I told you right. Like WordPress is still king. Even up until today, is used by 42.8% of the top 10 million websites as of October 2021. So I mean, there's nowhere near where WordPress is dying, and I think the hype of the whole Jamstack thing, it's probably there. But in terms of usability or like traction, and like the whole plugin ecosystem, it's still in WordPress. Um, so to function as a minimum, WordPress needs to have a web server, yep, and a MySQL server, MySQL database. Okay, so that is still a thing. So you still need a web, server and the database server, which is the MySQL. So to deploy on Azure, So you can use AKS, VMs, and app service. Okay, so there is still support for app service. Okay, and also a bunch of different options in the marketplace. So in this application template, you'll learn how to and will be able to easily quickly create and deploy your scalable and secure, okay, WordPress and Azure. Um, okay, so it still uses the Azure database for MariaDB. I wonder though if it's using the Flex server under the hood. Okay, this template will incur costs. Okay, that all right. So this is the architecture. Um, Azure, the data center. Okay, obviously you have it's still a single tenant or a single location um, kind of like deployment, meaning like if you want to deploy this to Australia East, then that means you have to just put them into that region. So it's not like a multi-region by default. So something I think that's one of the advantages of still sticking to something like a Jamstack is that it's like geo-redundant by default because it's all compiled as static files and like it's literally distributed by something like a CDN or content delivery network. But this one is still kind of like using a more like siloed environment. Okay, so all right, these are like the supplementary things like logging, log analytics, I think, and then there's app inside Azure Monitor, and probably that's notification center. So that's where your ACA is, the container environment, and then within that there's the WordPress. Um, okay, so you have the WordPress container inside, and then there's a Redis container as well inside. Okay, so there's also an option if you want to use a managed Redis or not. Okay, so like maybe if you want to use like something like the Azure Redis one, maybe there's an option for that one. And then, oh, interesting enough, it still uses MariaDB. I thought it uses MySQL. Uh, then there's a storage, and then there's the Redis. Okay, so there's a separate like network security group in there. So that means that these databases are not, or these data stores are not publicly available. You need to yeah, you need that they set it up in a way that it uses a proper networking capability with a VNet, virtual network, and a DNS that's going to be accessible by the public internet. Then no, sorry, the other way around. So within here there's the app gateway, and within that subnet, okay, that's where you talk to the container app. All right, so you don't actually, so even the container app itself is not accessible via the internet, so you need to go through the app gateway. And then there's a jump host. Okay, so there's a jump host to actually like jump, like to actually, I guess, to if you want to work with the database or the storage or the cache, like if you wanna like interact with it, so you need to go to the jump host. So the tech stack, um, okay, so Azure Database for MariaDB, Container Apps, Managed Environment, Storage, Key Vault, Gateway, Networking, GitHub Actions, App Insight, Log Analytics, and Bicep. Okay, so there is Bicep, so it's all IAC already. Then you need the Cloud Shell. Okay, so meaning if you go straight to the portal, comes with the Azure Cloud Shell, or if you want, you can go with an Azure CLI installed on your machine, which I'll probably be doing. And then besides the CLI itself, you need the developer CLI, which is the AZD. And obviously you need a Azure subscription for this one. So here are like the benefits of this solution. So the solution leverages Bicep, okay, and GitHub Actions to provide single-click deployment. There you go. So like it's all like IAC environment. So that means that if you're working on something like a much more production grade or like enterprise grade CMS. Um, Obviously, you can do something like, a multi-stage environment, something like, hey, here's a developer, version of the website, and then here's a staging or, UAT, and then you have a production environment. So having something like Bicep and GitHub Action um, allows you to really seamlessly make sure that you have the same environment or at least replicated environment across those different um, groups. So it uses Azure Container Apps, which is a managed service that allows you to deploy container solution to Azure without the manage. Yes. So basically, Container Apps is technically Kubernetes, technically AKS, but without all the Kubernetes APIs for you to work around with. It allows you to like easily work with containers, so that you don't actually necessarily have to um, set up all those necessary kind of like configurations to run your Kubernetes cluster. So it uses Azure Database from MariaDB, which is also full that allows you to deploy MariaDB server in Azure. Okay, yeah, it's part of that whole Azure Database for MariaDB. Azure Database for open source. I think there's also Postgres and MySQL, but I think MariaDB on Azure will be obsolete soon. So probably worth looking at using MySQL as well in the future. So the solution deploys Redis Cache to provide a high-performance caching. Allows you to improve the performance of the application. Okay. Solution uses Key Vault to store secrets. Yeah. Gateway to provide a single entry pointer. There you go. Yeah, I think this is the one I was mentioning earlier, wherein like the whole system here is not readily accessible by the internet. So it, like it's all within the virtual network, and then only the app the network from the internet talks to the gateway to access the application. Then the solution uses Azure networking. Yeah, so like making sure that things are configured properly, and then uses Azure Storage to persist state. Okay, so it probably okay, so it's probably creating a snapshot of the website. Um, you know, so that you have some sort of like backups of like different versions of your app. Then log analytics and app insights for monitoring. So other potential extensions would be Azure Front Door, okay, or using Docker Hub. Yeah. Okay, so instead of using Docker Hub, so it uses Docker Hub. So I guess it just pulls out the image directly from Docker Hub, the WordPress image. Then deploy an Azure Container Registry and manage and control WordPress and Redis image internally. Okay, yeah, that's also fine. Leverages multiple ACA revisions. Yeah, there you go. So like a blue-green deployment model. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, you can use DevOps as well. So deployment. So first off, okay. Now let's try to follow this one. So first you need to go azd auth login. So let me just open my shell here. All right. Oop. Oh, wrong app. Okay, so it said, let's do this side by side. So it said, by the way, I did clone the repository already, so it's already in my local machine. So we need to do an azd auth login. Okay, let me log in. Right, I was able to log in, and all right, create and navigate into an empty directory, clone the repo. Okay, all right, then do this one. The current directory is not empty, initially and may overwrite existing files. Yeah, That's fine. I think we need to choose. Just need to make sure that we're choosing the right directory for this one. Yep, it's correct. So it downloads the code. All right. So okay. The following files are both present both locally and in the template. Okay. So would you like to do this with these files? Okay. Yeah. Overwrite with versions from template. Okay. New environment name. Yeah. I'm just gonna call it um, ACAWP. Yeah, like Azure Container Apps WordPress. All right, there you go. Then once the command has finished, a directory called that Azure is created within. Yep, there you go. Okay, we probably have to edit that end file somehow. So let's open VS Code just so we can edit that. So a directory. So within the Azure directory, a directory is created, environment name. Yep, this one. Then there's this env. All right. Environment name, location, and Azure subscription. Yeah, it doesn't says the subscription yet. Maybe because I need to. Um, what's the Okay, let's ask Copilot. ACD command to switch Azure subscription. Generic shell command. There you go. Okay, let's try that. AC account list. Okay, so we probably want to use this one, which is what I use for this type of purposes. Okay. Is it set? There you go. Subscription. Yeah, let's copy that. There you go. Okay, let's clean that up. Now let's try to provision this. ACD provision. So it's downloading the Bicep files. Select there you go. So it's still gonna ask for an Azure subscription anyway. All right, let me just choose that one. Retrieving locations. Okay, so there you go. It would allow you to choose different locations. So I'll just use East US because it's usually the golden location for all of these things. Okay, creating a deployment plan. For the admin password. Okay. Yeah, one thing they could improve on is that if this is like mask so that I don't have to share it while recording. But I'm gonna tear down the environment anyway. So let's just say ACAWP pass. Nah. Admin username. I'll just call admin. No. Application name. Okay, I think ACAWP. No. Um, Something like that. ACAWP01, just to be sure. Okay, I'll just set the same password as well. No. Enter value. Yeah, I think I might want to go with the container one. Just so it's within the app serve container apps environment. Yeah, let's just give it a try. Okay, well, that's creating. I think that might take a bit of time, probably around a few minutes or so. So while that's happening, let's try to read back. So this will start the Azure infrastructure provisioning process. During the process, you will be asked to provide the following. The subscription, location, the passwords, FQDN. Okay, so we should have placed something like this, like HTTP, yeah, things like that. Okay. Um, yeah, I hope we can change that later on. The app name, yeah, which is ACAWP. Yeah. Right. So the username and password is for the jump host VM. All right. So yeah, I think we did choose the container option for Redis. Okay. All right. So alternatively, instead of doing this thing, there's also an option to using GitHub Actions. So like the way to do it is you fork the repo. So yeah, go there, fork the repo, um, and then create an Azure Service Principal. So the newly created GitHub repo uses GitHub Actions to deploy Azure resources and application code automatically. So your subscription is accessed using an Azure Service Principal. This is an identity created for use by applications. Yeah, so basically, to create this Azure Service Principal, you need to go through your Entra, which is the Azure Active Directory, to create an application registration. And that means that within your tenant, you want to recognize that, hey, GitHub action is gonna deploy or work around with Azure environment. So you log in interactively. So you do an AZ. Okay, so you can do all of this without going to the portal. So do an AZ login scope, graph API, default, then run the following AZ CLI command. So AZADSP, create for RBAC. Okay, there you go. So I think that's what this does, is that it creates that service principal for you using this command. So the command should output a JSON object. Okay, something like that. Yeah. Okay, it's nice to know that there's actually a way to do it in the CLI instead of actually going to the portal and like clicking buttons and stuff. So store the following values as GitHub Action secrets. Yeah, and put them as Azure credentials. Actually, I do remember when you're kind of like, if you do things in the Azure portal, like there's that deployment option out there that kind of like wraps all of this for you automatically. Like you just have to click and connect to GitHub. So it's like the other way around, wherein like it's the resource connecting to GitHub repo, instead of like this one, the repo is trying to connect to Azure. So yeah, basically with this approach, like in your secrets, you have to put in your Azure credential so that the repo or GitHub Actions have the capability to talk to your Azure subscription. So yeah, so repeat the above steps for the following secrets. Okay, so you need to set your admin password. and MariaDB password. Okay. Then set this up as variables. Yeah, like Azure admin username, application name. Okay. All right. So like basically this becomes like variables, and instead of like what we did here when we did type all of that, then location, Redis deployment options. So you will need to provide the following values as repo secrets to be used. Okay. So let's um, maximize that a bit. So there you go. Once you've added that, you'll have something like this on your actions for your secrets and variables. Okay. Then execute the Azure Dev YAML action workflow. So under the repo, click Actions in the left sidebar, WordPress deployment. Okay. All right. So I think this option is also better if you, let's say, making frequent changes on the actual WordPress app or the model, the application deployment itself. Um, but not that much if you wanna just spin up a WordPress instance and then just use it out of the box. You know what I mean? Like, you know, once it's already provisioned and everything, you just kind of like use it as as a consumable CMS. But this around, we're in like let's say you wanna create plugins or like themes and stuff like that. Like you can kind of like do that um, in this type of like model. Okay, so where are we at with the deployment? So we've created the resource group, the virtual network, log analytics, Key Vault, app insights, storage accounts. Okay, then still doing the rest. Okay, so I might just skip to the just quickly edit this video and move to the part where when this is all finished. All right, so welcome back. So after setting all this up, I actually encountered a bunch of issues here and there. First off, the password needs to, you have to make sure that it's a complex password. Just, don't put in just password. And then second is you actually have to bind it to your FQDN. So you can't just, use any FQDN. So I actually had to use something like like in this case, I use my domain, which is the michaeljohnpina.com. So I binded it to at wp.michaeljohnpina.com. And that's basically like if you go to your DNS zone in Azure, or you can go to something like GoDaddy, Namecheap, or whatever DNS provider. So I had to actually bind the WP as an A record to the public IP address of this whole thing. Okay. Right now, once that's all created, basically it's going to create a bunch of these resources for us. So in this case, you got a bunch of those keys and networking stuff, application insights, and even the jump host and the Bastion. It's all in there. The MariaDB um, and of course, the container app. It's all in here. And I think the Redis, there you go. So the Redis one is in here, and then this one is like the WordPress app. So like two different containers because we opted in for that container option. All right. Now let's try to go into the WordPress application, the one that I just binded in. So I went to wp.michaeljohnpina.com, which I binded. There, there you go. So it's showing a not secure one because I didn't bind into an SSL certificate just for demo purposes. But obviously, as part of this whole exercise, you also probably want to do that. All right, let's just set this up. Continue. Site title, yeah, Michael John Pina. Yeah, username. just say JTP na. Password, let's just say put that one. By the way, this password is different from the passwords that you've set in the previous steps. This is the WordPress account, and let me just put in yeah, and then install. Let's see if it's gonna work. Okay, seems to be loading. Okay, successful. And there you go. So now, if we go here, we should have a WordPress site. Yep, there you go. Now we do have that WordPress site up and ready for you. And then if you want to log in, you just think you go to something like /admin. Okay, yep. So it wants me to go through that thing. But yeah, I think that's a good start in terms of like creating a WordPress site using Azure Container Apps. Actually, while we're here, let me just try to go to the actual container app here. Let's see what's inside. So, okay, so that's the redirect one that we had earlier. So like it actually redirected us to go into the actual application URL of the WordPress site, which in this case it's not reachable, right? Because of the topology that was created that you need to go through the app gateway to access the site. So that's why if you try to go in through this container app instance straight away from your public web browser, it's not gonna work, right? Okay. But one thing I want to try is what if let's go um, through a Bastion environment. So let's go back there. Let's connect to the Bastion. Okay. All right. We have to go to the VM and connect via Bastion. All right. Let's do that. Where's that VM? There you go, the jump host. So let's try to connect via Bastion. And we have to use the credentials that we inserted in the CLI. All right. And yep, allow. So you see, we're actually inside a VM environment, right? A virtual machine. And within this VM, it's actually inside that network. I would assume that once you're inside the jump host, you're actually peered to the whole network, including the container app. So once we're inside, let's try to see if we can access the container app straight away from the browser inside that VM. Okay, it's taking a while to load. There you go. Just accept and open a browser. I click yes. Come on. Start without data. Continue without this data. And start browsing. Okay, now let's try to paste that address in. What was the address of the container app? Yeah, there you go. See, the container app is actually accessible within the Bastion environment, which is actually kind of clever. So that's pretty neat. So that's it. Thanks for everyone for watching, and I hope you learned something. Give this a try, and yeah, I think container apps is really a good way to host containers, you know, and there's so much to actually learn with this type of model. That's all for now. Thank you. Bye bye.